Hello everybody, welcome to the inaugural episode of Task C.
Hello.
I am one of your hosts. My name's Alex.
Yeah, and I'm Tom. I've been on a couple of the other podcast episodes. One of the tutors at Fraser's, sort of in the background helping things run. But I guess my expertise is probably section 3, whereas Alex is an expert in.
I wouldn't say expert, but I tutor sections 1 and 2, and mostly section 2 actually. That's my area of interest as well. I like section 2 ideas.
Yeah.
Some ideas.
What do you study, Alex?
So I'm actually studying philosophy at the moment, and literature. They're my 2 majors. I was doing biomed, but I let that go. It was a bit too much for me.
And it's a big change, but
yeah, it's been a rewarding change though. I like it.
Yeah, but I think it's a unique set of skills for an episode like this. I think you can probably relate to the slightly neurotic biomedical student.
That was definitely me at one point in time.
Yeah, but then translate some of the philosophy and literature you study for the masses. I think will be fun.
Yeah. So as we said, this podcast is called Task C, and we intend to kind of walk through various ideas, and some of it will be philosophy, politics, that kind of stuff, so that as students, when writing your essays, you will have things to talk about, ideas to discuss.
Exactly, and for this episode and for all the episodes hereout, we'll have Alex or another Section 2 tutor who is maybe at a slightly higher level in some of these ideas, and then some of the plebs like myself or other science students who, for many of us, these ideas are really foreign. And hopefully between a bit of repartee between the two, we can get to a level where whether you're someone who has sat it before and is scoring really highly, or someone who is just approaching essays for the first time, there's something of value on either end of the spectrum for you. So it should be good.
And just because I'm sure as all the information you can get your hands on will be as helpful for your essay writing as possible, I also have another podcast that I work on. It's called Alex and Liam Talk. My name's actually spelled a bit differently, Aleks. And that one's a bit different. It's not GAMSAT related. It's an interview-based podcast, and we've interviewed various people like Australian philosopher Peter Singer, who kind of pioneered the whole animal rights movement. Animal Liberation is his famous book, and also a famous, I guess he's famous, a lawyer turned human rights activist. I think he's actually still practicing as a lawyer. His name's Julian Burnside, and they're all on iTunes, all those shows.
Yeah, I know Julian Burnside. He presented at the Melbourne University for medical students, has a sort of a yearly conference for everyone.
Oh, right.
And he was talking about refugee policy. He was really, really impressive.
Yeah.
But also really nice. Just a nice, like down to earth kind of person.
Yeah, he's a really gentleman.
Yeah, we highly recommend going to have a listen to that as well. Again, this is just part of section 2 generally. There's having those multiple points of feedback, and I guess learning about the humanities generally is always going to be valuable, and especially some really interesting interviews and deep dives into certain philosophical things. So go listen to that, but not right now, because we're gonna start off. So who or what idea are we talking about today, and what's the quote that we're going to be talking about?
Okay, so today we are going to be talking about a 20th century existentialist philosopher from France called Jean-Paul Sartre. His name is... Yeah, thank you. I spent months trying to pronounce his name properly. It's quite a struggle.
Yeah.
And so he was part of this wave of existentialist philosophers in Western Europe from after the Second World War, and especially in France, because there was this ongoing conflict between France and Algeria. There was a war for independence in Algeria, and people weren't very happy with how others were being treated. So Sartre and a few others had all of this stuff to say about the human condition, why we're here, how we're here,
Yeah.
whether we can justify our existence, whether we can justify our acts, whether things can be more or less moral than others, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I guess that would have been a time of a lot of turmoil.
Yeah, definitely.
Following the war and yeah, okay, that's interesting. And so, what quote are we going to look at today?
Right, the quote. So the quote we're looking at is one from his book, Being and Nothingness. It's towards the end of the book. It's actually in his conclusion where he says, man is a useless passion, which is, quite profound and quite depressing as well, actually, because, immediately from the quote, you get the sense that he's saying that our lives, by man, of course, he means everyone,
all humans,
all humans,
aliens and zombies, but
and biomedists,
exactly, separate species, biomeditus.
So he's saying that that we're purposeless, that we can't justify our existence, and that we just kind of drift through life in this aimlessly, really.
And I guess thinking about so we always get 5 quotes or 4 quotes depending what sort of topics I guess man is a useless passion could be. For me, what comes to mind is maybe like meaning,
definitely,
or like the point of life or purpose as a whole. Those are maybe some of the things that could relate to this.
Definitely meaning, purpose, identity.
And I think it's an especially good one because passion, like just the word passion out of context, some people often, they do this thing in the essay, when they look at the quotes, they kind of do like a word searching thing. So rather than understanding each quote for what it's worth and what it applies to, they just go, passion is in 3 quotes. I'm going to write about passion. But I guess in this case, like maybe, but I don't really think that this is about passion necessarily.
No, I think by passion in this instance he means just, because I guess like we kind of are a passion, right? We just like we have a goal or something and that becomes our passion and we work towards it. And that's actually something that we will discuss shortly, his idea of like the fundamental project or the ultimate passion of a human's life. And he's got, he actually thinks that he's figured out what the ultimate goal is of human life, which is quite a big claim.
Well, that's a good segue. I'm waiting with trepidation for the answers. So why don't we get into the background of Jean-Paul and a little bit more about this quote and deep dive. I'm looking forward to learning a bit about him.
Okay, so man is a useless passion. What does he mean by that? So first of all, to understand his conception of human life, we have to understand what he thinks humans are and what he thinks they're not. So in his book, Being and Nothingness, which I don't think anyone, it's very, I really struggle to read parts of it. People read the whole thing, which is unbelievable, but in the book he divides, I guess, life or things into 2 categories. He sees humans as being these things called being for itself, where they're conscious. And so that's the first category. So conscious human being.
Being for itself.
For itself. And the second category is being in itself. And that's, this computer, something which isn't. For now, who knows with the developments in artificial intelligence, it might be conscious in a few years, but maybe that's a bad example. This pot plant, it's not conscious. It's just a thing. It can't choose to be anything.
Unfortunately, it's plastic.
Fortunately, it's plastic.
It's in itself. It just is.
It just is.
It's a pot plant.
It's a pot plant. It's nothing. That's all that it will be. And it only exists insofar as we, conscious beings, define it as having certain properties.
Right. Okay.
So a pot plant couldn't ever be like, this is what I am and this is what I want to be. It's only going to be what we define it as being. And this is kind of the foundation for his conclusion that man is a useless passion, because he thinks that the pot plant or the being in itself, the thing which is non-conscious, can justify its existence because it is what it is. It's just that. It's nothing more, nothing less. It's always itself.
Yeah.
Whereas us, conscious beings, being for itself, we are always trying to transcend, trying to overcome, trying to become something that we're not. So take the example of, I imagine a lot of the listeners, they are biomed students, science students, art students, or just students, and they want to become a doctor or a dentist or something. They want to become something they're not.
Yeah.
So they want to transition from their current state into a state which they're not yet.
Right.
And then, when they become a doctor, they'll want to become something more, a specialist or a parent or something like that.
So there's always some ongoing pursuit of
things
something that's ahead.
That's ahead, exactly.
Yeah.
In the name of, so all of these things are being done in the name of trying to become like the pot plant, trying to become what I am.
And I guess you're saying that there's a relationship between the beings that are for itself and beings that are in itself, in that all of the fours, so that, the conscious beings are defining all the unconscious things around them.
Yeah.
But that because this pot plant has a defined used utility and existence, then it's justifiable as a pot plant.
Yeah.
But then if we try to do the same thing for ourselves, there is no arbitrary sentence or explanation for what we are or what our purpose is. And so therefore we end up being a useless passion.
Yeah. Because Jean-Paul thinks that what we're trying to do is become the pot plant, which is unconscious.
Yeah.
And we can never become that. We're always trying to become what we're not. But we can never become what we are.
That's pretty interesting, because I guess we're always, I don't know, this is, again, dumbing it down, but for me, when I think of the goals that I'm striving for, it's usually with some objectivity, like I will be this, and this is an objective definition of what a doctor is, and I will be that. But then when you're there, you realize that it's not an objective definition. You still have goals and purpose, and you're right, so there is no objective end. It's just sort of you're chasing after the next carrot that's in front of you, whatever that is. You never get to the carrot, and then you're defined forever. There's always more choices, and I guess more being to go on with.
That's right. And that's actually, so if you agree with Jean-Paul and you think that we can never justify our existence because we can never become a pot plant or something, then that kind of ties in nicely with what you're saying, that we strive to become something. Let's say we become it, and then we strive to become something different. So because we never actually become what we are, we never complete ourselves, or we're never able to justify our existence. We're forever purposeful. We're always doing things. We're always productive. And so that could be kind of like a subtle response to the quote that man is a useless passion, because you could say, man is a useless passion, but that's good because we're always doing things. We're always productive. And if we weren't a useless passion, then we would, just become stagnating like the pot plant, and we wouldn't do anything.
It would be defined and never achieve anything. I guess I have a question. So I always try and be a contrarian and break the rules. So what about someone like a monk, say? Maybe their passion is trying to, I don't know, it's hard to define, but let's say clear their mind and to try and avoid these conscious pursuits. Maybe in what they're doing, they're trying to become a being in itself as part of the environment. I'm imagining, of course, in my head, sitting on top of a mountain with beautiful snow going down, but they're still somehow warm in some sort of yoga pose. But I guess so someone like that, maybe their pursuit of happiness or a higher state is trying to remove the conscious elements from their existence. So maybe that's a sort of similar thing to sort of what Jean-Paul is saying, is that for humans to feel less useless, we actually have to stop pursuing things at all. We have to try and become like the pot plant. But I don't know, I'm just spitballing.
That's an interesting take on it. So that's right, that he thinks that this is kind of moving on to the next topic, but he thinks that the fundamental project, which is like the so we have all of these projects in between our fundamental projects. So let's say you want to become a doctor or a teacher, you want to graduate from uni. All of these little projects will be done in pursuit of the fundamental project, which is like the overarching project of our life. And Jean-Paul thinks that the overarching project of our life is to become the pot plant.
Right.
But that's impossible.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. Like, maybe we can avoid uselessness if we become the pot plant, but we can never become the pot plant. So it's like this interesting paradox where
it's kind of like the Matrix.
Just pursuing impossibility forever. Yeah. Okay, so this would be a convenient time to ask you how you think you could use what we've discussed in an essay.
Yeah, sure. So I guess in any essay, we have to think about what topic we're talking about. So let's go back to that quote, man is a useless passion. So just like I find this useful. So it's useful to define what sort of topic or idea you want to talk about. So maybe we could talk about purpose at a kind of abstract level. And I might really like the categorization that Jean-Paul uses, and I might plagiarize it for my own purposes. And I think actually that's like a teaching point. You don't have to like verbatim quote Jean-Paul. You don't have to say, this idea is taken from, no. So you could say, in defining the purpose of any person or human, it's useful to think about unconscious and conscious things and how there's fundamentally a difference there. In that unconscious things, generally like a pen or a screwdriver or a microphone or anything, they have a defined purpose. It's very clear. They can only be that. They've got arbitrary bounds around what they are and what they can be. And so I guess in a sense, the microphone maybe has a very pure purpose that they will always achieve and fulfill, and they've never missed the mark because that's what they are. Whereas for people or conscious beings, we don't have that same definition. I guess to extend that, within conscious beings, does that include a sort of intelligent life or unintelligent life, or where is that line drawn in the sand? So I might talk about that in a paragraph about maybe as beings become more intelligent, their purpose becomes harder, and like their happiness gets diluted and their purpose becomes more and more dilute as they become more and more conscious. Sort of aligning with what Jean-Paul's saying in the sense that we're all striving to be the unconscious screwdriver that screws, but it's not possible. And sort of the further away you get from being a jellyfish in the ocean, has a pretty simple life, its consciousness is pretty limited, its purpose is pretty well defined. Whereas as a person, we have so many more opportunities. Even our awareness of our own mortality hastens our pursuit of other things. Yeah. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe I talk about that in two paragraphs, like how purposes is categorized, and then maybe how humans we will never find our purpose. And thus, I agree with the quote that for conscious beings, purpose is not possible and not something we can achieve.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
that's really good. So I think we should keep that as an agreeing with the prompt. And then perhaps you can move on to a disagreeing argument with the prompt.
Yeah, sure. So I think at a core level, I would find it quite hard to disagree with this prompt in some ways. I think it's always hard. In some ways, it's harder to disagree when you're at this kind of idea-based level. Because you have to have really pure concepts to kind of argue with it. That's what all good philosophers are, right? They're good with arguments. How would I disagree? I guess I would disagree. You can disagree with this if you can set up some arbitrary purpose of life. So maybe if the purpose of us is to our progeny or our legacy.
That'd be pretty hard to argue. A difficult question I asked.
I guess, or like you could say that maybe like our purpose is to lead like a value-driven life or something along those lines. And so, although we don't, although maybe we don't ever reach like our objective, whatever that is, and we never we never fully fulfill those pursuits. If we live a life that is led by those values and remembered by those values, then we live on, and maybe but it's a very subjective thing. It's not a good argument.
No, because that's pretty much what Jean-Paul says. And that's a convenient time to move on to the second idea that we're going to discuss, where he talks about values and freedom. And yeah, long story short, I will go into it in detail, but what he essentially says is that we have to ditch our pursuit of becoming the pot plant, and we actually have to pursue freedom, because this is another quote of his: freedom is the ultimate source of value.
Right.
And so that ties in nicely with what your contrarian argument was, which is that maybe all that we need to do is have a value-driven life, and that's pretty much what he says. Yeah. But he says it in a little bit of a different way.
Because I guess it sort of frees you from that pursuit of being the pot plant.
And for all you listeners, we're not saying that you should go and fill your room with pot plants and stare at them all day. Still stay true to your goals.
Water me, I feel dry.
Okay, so the quote: freedom is the ultimate source of value. Okay, so to discuss this, I'll take the example of so just as you're listening to this, think about all of the values that you cherish, the things that you follow, the moral codes that you follow. How many of them have you come up with yourself organically?
Yeah, so I guess I don't want to list my values out, but I definitely think of the way that we formulate our values. It's definitely related to family and maybe religion and culture and where you're from and in society you live in, job. I guess in most ways, everyone's values, I expect, would sort of be based on that roughly.
Yeah. Somewhere we're socialized to believe in certain things.
Correct.
Yeah. If we're going back to Sartre's conception of freedom as being the source of value, they don't really they don't work well together. Like a human who is conscious, and because they're conscious, they're free, but also being a person who has just inherited all of these values and isn't really challenging them very much.
Right. So I guess, so I know what you mean. So to sort of to be free, like freedom, you have to also liberate yourself from these values that are attributed to you by others.
You don't have to, but you have to recognize that you can be free, that you can challenge them.
Right. Okay.
And I think that's what the quote means. As going back to being for itself and being in itself.
Yeah.
So being for itself being a conscious human being.
Yeah.
We can imagine, we can break the causal order of things by imagining current situations happening differently. So us talking right now, but instead of both of us wearing black tops, we're wearing red ones or something.
Blue ones or something.
Blue ones. Yeah. So we're free to imagine different...
Anything.
Yeah, anything. Literally anything.
Unlimited, yeah.
And because we're free to do that, it kind of, undermines the conception that values are binding, or that, we just live by what we're told to live by. We follow what we're told to follow.
Yeah.
And so what Jean-Paul wishes to say, at least in my reading of the text, is that if we are to be purposeful, if we are to be not to justify our existence because we can't become the pot plant, but if we are to, live the most meaningful life possible, we have to interpret things through our own subjective lens.
Right. For our own values.
We define our own values.
Yeah.
So because
our own
we're free.
Principles and things. Yeah.
Yeah. And this actually ties in nicely with arguments for and against free will.
Yeah.
So I guess before I give my opinion on it, what do you think about free will?
Yeah. So it's a really interesting topic. So I think it's something that a lot of students, especially in essays, they sort of arbitrarily say we either do or do not have free will in a very binary kind of way.
We don't provide arguments.
Or become. I think that goes for everything. It's ironic. It's these values that are attributed to everyone. It's in the same way the way we think that sort of thought control is from all the things that are attributed to free will. So, you know, we'll read books where everything is fated, like Shakespeare, and there's a soliloquy at the start, and you know, it tells you exactly what's going to happen. All the way to there's complete and utter free will. There's complete meaninglessness to everything. You can choose and decide anything in your own life. I guess I feel like there's something in between. It's a kind of maybe more philosophical feeling that I have. It's not something I can argue particularly well. But I feel like I would like to hope that that I preserve my own free will and that not everything's fated. But I also appreciate that for some beings and some people that their free will is limited by whether it's like a regime or they're imprisoned. And in that way, I guess their free will is limited by the value structures that are around them. So I guess, I don't know, free will is malleable. We have free will, but it's limited by the structures we live in, the ways we think, and the people around us. That's the way I feel.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. I somewhat agree. And I'm actually really torn between, like, you know, contemporary neuroscience and like what Sartre believes. And so what Jean-Paul thinks is that, let's say we both went back 10 seconds in time, and we were both, like, I was about to start my sentence, you're about to start your sentence, and we go back 10 seconds and we decide to articulate them differently. That's what he thinks is possible. So he thinks you can go back in time and do something completely differently. And that would mean that we have ultimate free will, that we can do whatever we like at any point in time. And we're not responding to environmental stimuli or physical stimuli or anything. So, you know, we're like literally creating our own experience of the world. But that's kind of like, I'm not sure whether they're ever going to be able to get to the bottom of the free will argument, because
it's very abstract.
It's super abstract, but some contemporary neuroscientists have argued that that's impossible, that you can't go back in time and do something differently, because the reason why you decided to do that thing in the past is because you're responding to, like, you know, your brain was in a particular state, and that brain state made you do something.
Generated a response.
A response. And so if you went back in time, you would have the same brain state, because the same stimuli would have happened, you would have received, and so you would have done the same thing.
It's the same thing as like the space-time continuum in Einstein, right? Like, space and time is linked because at a certain time you're in a certain position, and so if you were to go back in time, you would have to move along the same space that you were within. And so when you change something, there's like, anyway, there's a few, maybe we can try and find some good videos, but basically space and time are so intrinsically linked that it's not actually really possible to go back in time and change the path, because the path is set in the space-time continuum. Anyway, so in the same way, if like the brain and response is inherently linked, like the brain is just if you believe it's just a set of cells and synapses that make a decision, then our free will is limited by that, I guess.
And that's, so Sartre doesn't. He thinks that we have ultimate free will.
Right.
And again, tying back into freedom is the ultimate source of value. If we have ultimate free will, we can exist however we like. We can adhere to any values which we like. And so I guess that definition of free will liberates you, because you can have any set of values, anything that you perceive, not even that you perceive, just anything that you want. There's like an unlimited set of choices. And then I guess if you select, the way I'm trying to think of it is, if you have a set of values and they're objective to you, then even though we all have subjective, disappointing experiences in our life, they're all experienced through an objective set of values that we have set and that should please us. So in that way, you're like the value pot plant, right? Like that's your in itself. Your values are the thing that's in itself. And that obviously they can change, but at that point in time, that is objective and it's not disappointing because they're the values we have. Okay, I think that's great.
So I guess thinking about how we write about these things, I think for me at least, the things I'm going to take away from our discussion, Alex, is how to think about how consciousness and purpose is defined, thinking about the whole idea of being for itself and in itself.
Yeah.
And then maybe extending that into, I guess for me, it's like objectivity and subjectivity, or things that we can control about our lives.
Yep.
So value structures is something that we can objectively control, and how free will is limited or unlimited. And these are all things that we can talk about and write about, even at that kind of low level about your own life and your own personal experiences and how you think these things inform that. Or at a maybe more high level ideas based approach, which is what we usually try and go for where possible.
So I think that's right. So the first part of our discussion was about being for itself, being in itself, purpose, meaning, and just to reiterate, the conclusion that Jean-Paul reached was that we are purposeless if we try and become the pot plant. But then moving to the second part of our discussion about freedom, when you hold freedom as your ultimate value, you can really do whatever you like. Perhaps you're not a useless passion because you're just, free to live however you like. It's a bit abstract, but these are ideas that are widely applicable. And I'm sure if you put enough time trying to get your head around them, then as you said, you can either write about yourself and reflect upon these ideas, or you can go for a higher ideas-based level approach and try and incorporate them into your paragraphs without referring to yourself.
Yeah, excellent. Well, that was the first episode of Task C. I think it went pretty well.
I think it was good.
I think some other sort of good news about the podcast. So we're now available on pretty much like every different service that exists. That's a cool thing about Anchor, where we upload it, just puts it on everything. So if you want to listen on Spotify, Pocket Casts, iTunes, whatever, it should be there. We'll keep doing more episodes. If there's a topic or something that you really want us to cover, don't hesitate to email us at info@phrasesgamsat.com.au, or comment on our posts and various stories and things, because we're always happy to talk about any sort of idea. And thanks again to Alex for coming and speaking to us.
No, my pleasure.
I
look forward to working to doing future podcasts as well.
Yeah, it should be good. All right, until next time.
Everyone.
That was Task C, brought to you by the Phrases GAMSAT podcast network thing. Look forward to speaking to you next time.
Best of luck. Bye.